Hello, everybody. Welcome back once again. We're taking another quick look at the new Energon Universe, this time with issue 2 of the Transformers. As always, I am Jay, a person who transforms into somebody slightly less funny. And the first issue got some solid critical reception, so hopefully the second issue keeps up. So, previously on the Transformers. In the middle of Nowherestan, America, wayward youth Spike Witwicky and Carly, while out for a night of melancholic pondering, inadvertently discovering the Autobot Ark buried deep within the mountainside. Unfortunately for them, they arrive at just the right time, as the occupants are reawoken, both Autobot and Decepticon, and the Great War of Cybertron is started again, this time on Earth. The Autobots are nearly defeated, but thanks to help from the humans, they're able to escape and play in time for recovery. Unfortunately, the Decepticons are not waiting around to gather resources and amass power in any means necessary. So the second issue is a little slower paced than the first issue, but that's to its benefit, not its hindrance. The plot's about as complex as the first issues, though. After some initial exposition setting up the universe and the new status quo, the Decepticons recommence their attack on the power plant, this time stealing the Autobots' technology in order to better siphon the resources, and what's available of the Autobots roll out to stop them. I wouldn't exactly say it's stretched out by any means. It's about as long as it needs to be. It doesn't really feel like there's anything that's padding, other than maybe in the middle there where the Decepticons are basically just going ham on the power plant there. But beyond that, I think it's a pretty good issue. The setup and exposition we're given is pretty much par for the course for G1 continuity. Something something Cybertronic Peace, something something Decepticons, something something Now We Kung Fu Fight. It's really not that different than it usually is, though there are a few changes, and for the most part, being the second issue, there's still plenty of space to go over. So first and foremost, the immediate change and the biggest change compared to usual is the time frame. One of the more consistent things of the G1 continuity, and one of the things I've never really liked, is the time scale of everything. The Great War is always millions of billions of years old, and it's going for fucking centuries, and everybody involved is ancient as hell, and it's fucking... It gets ridiculous, especially, like it works for the most part in Marvel's continuity, where the war is mostly contained on Cybertron, and it's pretty much stagnant at that point, while the Autobots were asleep on the Ark on Earth. But in a lot of the other continuities, it starts to get really ridiculous once they start to add on to it. Like, IDW got really, really fucking bad with the timescale of the Great War as it went on. Especially with all the stuff with Rodimus and the Lost Light. So that's the first and major change of the setting, is that the Great War is only about 200 years old. It's no longer, no later. Again, there's not a whole lot of setup of the status quo of Cybertron before that, or what started the war or anything like that. It's just Cybertron was at peace, blah blah blah, war started 200 years ago, blah blah blah, we are here. So there's not a whole lot of given, but there's enough given to establish it for a new reader, and the changes are minimal, but I do really like the time frame change. I think it allows for a more consistent storyline, I think. And that also carries over to Optimus, where he's established as not being significantly older than the war itself. He specifies that he was only born or built, or whatever the term they're going to use for, they don't really say, relatively shortly before the war. So, again, that's an interesting change. We've got a younger Optimus here. That's I think the first time that we've done like a Rookie Prime right out of the gate. Like, we've had Young Prime or Rookie Prime stuff before, but typically that's either as a flashback, but it's never really like the main thrust of the series. I think like the closest maybe is Transformers Animated, but even then he's not really a rookie. He's just kind of inexperienced at the job. So I think this is interesting. I think it's going to be a nice way to, again, shake up the dynamic that we usually get, where we're going to have a younger Optimus. We're going to have him not quite possibly as wise, but he's still definitely Optimus. And that's another thing that is consistent from the first issue, is that Optimus is very much, he's the typical Optimus, but that's not a bad thing. I think DWJ really understands Optimus again. There's a nice scene in the opening of the issue before he starts going to the backstory stuff, where he's just kind of standing around and admiring the environment of the planet, and he accidentally crushes a deer, and he legitimately gets upset and starts mourning for it, and is like horrified that he did that. And he has this nice scene with Spike where he's talking about like, all this stuff is so new to me, like plants and dirt and flesh and all this, like I don't know what I'm doing. I'm terrified by this. It's interesting. It's a really good scene. It really captures the heart of Optimus Prime, where even like something as insignificant as that, I mean, not to say animals are insignificant or anything like that before somebody gets mad, but something as like small as that, even as an accident, is something that weighs heavy on his conscience. And I really do like that. And he and Spike had this nice little bonding scene where they kind of talk about like the differences of their cultures and like family, you know, the terms of family and parents and stuff like that. And I do like that. I really like that, a little bit of a bonding there, and the adoption of Optimus treating his troops as a family, which has kind of always been the thing. But it's interesting that he's kind of putting a name to it this early in the series too. Beyond Optimus, though, we don't get a whole lot more of the regular cast, whether Autobot or Decepticon. We're introduced to Cliffjumper, who is basically going to be filling the Bumblebee role here. They kind of spoiled that in the marketing, and to be honest, I think that's a nice subversion. He has a nice little scene there where, again, he's kind of freaking out about, like, organics and plants and stuff like that, and he has a little, like, freak out with Spike and Carly, and that's nice. I like that. It's a good little comedic relief moment to kind of lighten the tone from the very tense, very heavy melodrama of the flashback scene. But I can't really say much for him as a character because he doesn't really do a whole lot there. It seems like they're going to be setting up like a buddy duo thing with him and Carly, kind of like how Spike and Bumblebee usually have. So I think that's going to be an interesting little dynamic they have, but we'll have to see where it goes. Beyond that, we don't really get anything else. The cons are just the cons. I mean, we get a little bit more of Soundwave and Skywarp, and I think that's about it. We don't really see anybody else. I mean, I think Laserbeak shows up for a page, but beyond that, they're pretty static again still. And I mean, again, they're pretty fleshed out there character-wise, but it's not like they really do a whole lot to stand out in this issue. It's mostly just, we gotta build the things so we can steal Energon, because that's all we do. That's all the Decepticons ever do, is steal Energon or kill people, and we're not particularly good at either, but we're gonna keep trying. Although, again, this is pretty violent. Not as quite violent as the first issue, but it's still got a little bit of violence in it. But I'm skipping ahead a bit. But in terms of characters, there's really good. We get a nice little scene with Ratchet and Optimus where they're talking about how, like, they're weighing the pros and cons of, like, do we give up our own Energon to revive our troops, or do we leave them suffer, or, you know, do we have to resort to the worst case scenario early on, kind of thing. But beyond that, again, it's a nice little scene to set that up, but again, it's relatively brief in the grand scheme of things. The only real new character, well, outside of a quick cameo of Beachcomber getting shot in the fucking head, the only real new character we get is, of course, Megatron, who shows up in Optimus's flashback. He doesn't say or do anything. We get exactly 2 panels of Megatron, one of him just standing there menacingly, and another of him with Prime in a chokehold, which are really good. I really like the way Megatron looks here. Though it'll be interesting to see exactly what his deal is in the next couple of issues, because, again, they set up in the first one that he's not around anymore in some vague capacity. And again, there's not quite as much action as in the first issue, but there's still a lot of action, and it's definitely as brutal, but it's not quite as violent, if that makes any sense. Like, in the first issue, it was really violent, but that's just because a lot of people were getting fucking shot and blown up and crushed and all of that. Whereas here, it's mostly the Decepticons blowing stuff up, which is still pretty gnarly, but it's not quite as Bumblebee getting his head blown off level of violent. Though, to be fair, Starscream does still keep up his body count, where he kills 2 nameless humans. He crushes one to death with his foot, and there's a scene where he gets into a dogfight with a fighter jet, and he blows up the jet and kills the pilot. Which is a nice little scene. Well, nice in terms of content. I don't necessarily mean it's nice because we get to see a guy getting fucking crushed, but you get what I mean. So the violence is a little more minimal, but I think that's fine. I think it still carries the serious tone very well. But yeah, there's not quite as much that happens in this issue. That's about it. Once the Decepticons start blowing up the facility more and the Autobots find out, the issue pretty much ends with them running off to go stop them. There's a brief tease at the end where Spike bails on Optimus to go run off to, I'm gonna guess, his house to go find something or other. He's opened up some kind of closet or whatever, which I'm gonna guess is him trying to take like his dad's guns or something like that, because his dad was an army vet, which I think I mentioned in the first one. There's also another little tease where Carly goes back to, I'm going to assume, her house, and curiously she finds Spike's dad there in full army getup. Oh, and there's a really kind of, I don't want to say pointless, there's a weird tease at the end where they reveal the guy that got crushed in the first issue, the bald dude, is Carly's dad, which is, I don't want to necessarily say is pointless. It really doesn't feel necessary just because he wasn't really much of a character in the first issue to make that reveal work, and I don't really know what they're going to be setting up with that. Like, if Carly hadn't already been hanging out with the Autobots, I would have assumed they were going to be setting up a Spider-Man killed my dad type of plot, like with Gwen Stacy back in the day, but no, because she's already been hanging out with the Autobots. She already knows about them. She already knows the difference. Unless she goes, full moron there afterwards. I don't think they're going to be doing that kind of plot line, so I don't really know what they're going for with there. I think it can be something interesting, but it just doesn't feel like it really matters all that much. Oh, and speaking of things that are being set up for later, we got our first major tease of the greater universe where the co-pilot of the jet that Starscream blows up happens to be Duke of G.I. Joe. He gets to do a brief fight with Starscream where he shoots Starscream in the head, and he doesn't really do any damage, but he hurts Starscream, which is surprising because up to that point, every normal gun we've seen has done fuck all to them as usual. So I wonder if they're going to be going like the G1 cartoon route here, where G.I. Joe has fucking death rays and stuff in this. So I don't know. It'll be interesting. We get a little bit of a preview for the first issue, and I kind of like the tone they're setting up for the Duke book. It seems very... I kind of want to say they're doing like a First Blood Part 2 kind of vibe, where Duke used to be the best, but now he's kind of broken and jaded, but they're pulling him back for one last mission type of thing. It's not quite one-to-one with Rambo, but it's that general vibe that I'm getting from it. So, I don't know. I think it'll be interesting. I like Williamson. I think he'll probably do a pretty good job. I don't know how well it'll mesh with Transformers or Void Rivals or whatever else is coming. I know the first issue is going to have Duke fighting Starscream some more, I think, because Starscream's on the cover. But I don't know if that's just to bait people or if it's just to tie into what happened here. I don't know. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. We still have to wait for that. But yes, overall, definitely a really good second issue. It keeps the momentum, keeps up the quality. Doesn't seem like it's going to be dipping. It seems like it's going to keep going up from here. The art is definitely much better. I don't know if DWJ just got in more time to work on this one or fleshed it out, or maybe it's just because it's not quite as action focused. But everything feels better. The Autobots and the Decepticons all look better. Again, because there's not that many fights, I think it's just there's less action to draw, so there's a little bit more time to actually focus on them just kind of standing about or more mundane actions. So overall, it's definitely still a great issue, definitely keeping up the pace. I still enjoy the hell out of this, and I'm hoping this momentum keeps going as long as it can, but for now, I don't see like it's going to falter anytime soon. So that's going to be it for me this time. If you enjoyed, let me know. Tell me how you felt about this issue as well, because I'm interested to hear other people's opinions. But beyond that, I will see you all next month for issue 3, and I believe the first issue of Duke's book comes out as well. And in between that, I'll probably kind of go back and go through what's out of Void Rivals, do a smaller video, or do a more of a longer, more scripted thing for that, and then start going through it weekly from there, or monthly from there. So I will see you all next time.